In the last part, Rex's alert on a single trolley outside the mall exposed a hidden duffel bag and a man who vanished before anyone could stop him. But that was just the beginning. Now, the trail has led to a place no one expected, and what's hidden there could explain everything. The question is, when they open that door, will they be ready for what's inside? Here's the full story. But before we roll it, drop where in the world you are watching this video in the comments and hit that subscribe button. The sun had dipped low enough that the mall's glass facade reflected nothing but the hazy amber light of early evening. The crowds inside were still moving at their weekend pace, but outside at the East Service Road behind Westview Mall, the mood was different. The quiet here wasn't peaceful, it was watchful. Grant stood beside Rex, the canine's posture as rigid as the yellow tape that still fluttered in the distance around the trolley scene. The duffel bag from earlier was now locked away in evidence, but Rex's attention hadn't shifted. If anything, it had sharpened. His gaze wasn't toward the mall anymore. It was down the narrow service lane that snaked behind the complex and out toward the industrial area beyond. This was where the black sedan had slipped away earlier. And now, with the bag gone, Rex seemed certain that whatever they just uncovered wasn't the whole picture. Detective Rowan's unmarked SUV rolled to a stop beside them. The detective stepped out, phone in hand, his tone clipped. They found the sedan, about 3 miles out, engine still warm, doors unlocked, and not a single print inside. Grant frowned, which means they wiped it clean before bailing. That's deliberate. Rowan nodded toward the service lane. We're going to walk it. I want to see if they dumped anything before ditching the car. The service road was narrow, lined with dumpsters, loading docks, and the occasional flickering light fixture mounted high on the building walls. The air smelled faintly of oil and damp cardboard. Halfway down, Rex's pace quickened, his nose dipped low, tail stiff. Grant knew the difference between a casual sniff and a track. This was a track. The dog was following a scent trail, and judging by the speed, it was fresh. They passed a loading dock with one bay door partially open, just enough to show stacks of flattened cardboard inside. Rex paused, nose lifting toward the crack, but after a quick sniff, he moved on. Grant made a mental note small details mattered in cases like this. The trail led them to the far end of the lane, where the pavement widened into a small gravel pull-off. Faint tire tracks led away from the spot, matching the sedan's tread pattern. But something else caught Grant's eye, a scuff mark near the curb, as if something heavy had been dragged from the vehicle toward the weeds along the fence line. Rex was already there, head low, sniffing with deliberate focus. His handler followed, brushing back the overgrowth. That's when they saw it, 2 black garbage bags tied shut with industrial zip ties. Rowan crouched, pulling on gloves before touching them. The first bag, when opened, revealed nothing but shredded paper. Thousands of tiny strips, some no bigger than a fingernail. The second bag was stranger. Inside were 3 identical hooded sweatshirts, all brand new, still with their tags attached, but each had the inside pockets lined with a thin layer of what looked like lead foil. Grant glanced at Rowan. That's not fashion. Shielding, Rowan murmured, used to block scanning devices. Someone didn't want whatever was in those pockets getting picked up by detectors. Before they could say more, Rex's head snapped up, ears pricked. His body went still, eyes fixed down the gravel path that led toward a chain-link gate. Grant followed his gaze. At the far end, barely visible in the fading light, was a figure tall, wearing a faded baseball cap. The same man. The man didn't run. He simply watched them for a few seconds before turning and slipping through the gate into the industrial complex beyond. Rowan moved fast, but the gate was padlocked from the other side. By the time they made it through a side entrance, the man was gone. What he'd left behind, though, was almost worse than his presence. On the ground near the gate lay a key fob, black, unmarked. Rowan picked it up, weighing it in his palm. This isn't for a car. This looks like a building access fob. Grant's mind jumped immediately to the metallic card they'd found earlier in the duffel. Was this connected? If so, it meant the man in the cap wasn't just watching. He'd been close enough to leave them something either by mistake or as a message. Back at the lot, they handed the fob over to forensics. The tech didn't take long to confirm, no prints. Wiped clean. But the internal chip was still intact. It would take hours to decrypt where it belonged. That left them with nothing to do but wait, or so they thought. 20 minutes later, as Grant was giving his statement, Rex stiffened again, this time not toward the service road, but toward the mall itself. His nose tilted upward, catching something in the air, then pulled toward the east entrance. Grant followed. Inside, the mall was still lively, shoppers moving in and out of stores, kids darting toward the arcade, the smell of pretzels and fried food lingering in the air. But Rex ignored all of it, heading straight for a small maintenance corridor tucked between a shoe store and a cell phone kiosk. "Where does this lead?" Grant asked the nearest security guard. The guard hesitated. Service elevator. Mostly staff access. Goes down to the basement storage rooms." Rowan arrived just in time to hear that. "Basement's not on the public map, is it?" The guard shook his head. "No, just supplies, cleaning equipment." But Rex's reaction said otherwise. The dog was now pawing lightly at the elevator door, then sitting, gaze locked on the seam as if waiting for it to open. Grant exchanged a look with Rowan. The timing, the fob, the man in the cap, it was starting to form a picture. Rowan nodded toward the guard. "Call maintenance. I want this elevator open now." When the doors finally slid apart, the dim light inside revealed nothing unusual, just an empty freight car with scuffed metal walls. But Rex stepped inside without hesitation, nose pressed to the floor. He sniffed the corners, then abruptly stopped in the center, pawed once, and sat. That was his alert. Something or someone had been in this elevator recently, carrying whatever scent had been in that duffel bag. Rowan exhaled slowly. If the bag was the bait, maybe the basement's the trap. And as the elevator began its slow descent, Grant couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into the next move of a game someone else had already set in motion. The elevator shuddered as it descended, the faint hum of machinery filling the cramped space. The panel's floor indicator only showed numbers down to B1, but according to the maintenance guard, this building's blueprints listed nothing below ground level. That detail sat heavy in Grant's mind. Rex stood steady, ears twitching, nose lifted as if the very air carried the answer. Grant had learned to trust that posture. It meant the dog wasn't just following a faint scent, he was tracking something immediate. When the doors opened, the first thing they saw was the corridor, narrow, lit by buzzing fluorescent strips and lined with plain metal doors. It didn't feel like a supply area, it felt hidden, too clean, too organized. Rowan motioned for the guard to hang back. "Nobody comes down here without clearance. You stay put." They started down the hallway, footsteps echoing off the concrete floor. Halfway along, Rex pulled sharply toward a door on the right, his nails scraping faintly against the metal. The number 4 was painted in black across its center. Grant tried the handle. Locked. Rowan produced the unmarked fob they'd found near the service road and held it against the card reader beside the door. A soft beep, then a green light. The lock clicked. Inside, the air shifted, cooler with a faint chemical tang. Rows of shelves filled the space, but instead of cleaning supplies, they were stacked with sealed crates, each stamped with alphanumeric codes. Rex moved along the aisle, head low, tail stiff. He stopped at a crate on the bottom row, pawed once, then sat. Grant crouched, running his hand over the surface. No markings, no labels beyond the code. Rowan was already snapping photos, muttering under his breath. "These codes, they're too short for inventory tags. These are custom." From the far corner came another detail. A work table with tools laid out in precise rows. Pliers, sealing clamps, rolls of plastic wrap identical to the one used on the duffel bag. The connection clicked into place. Whoever was operating here had packed the bag found in the trolley, and if Rex was alerting now, it meant whatever was inside those crates was linked to the same operation. Before they could pry one open, a muffled noise cut through the silence. Footsteps, fast from somewhere deeper in the basement. Grant glanced at Rowan. "We're not alone." They moved quickly, following the sound through another side corridor. This one ended at a door propped slightly open, warm light spilling through the crack. Inside was a small office desk, filing cabinet, and a bank of monitors showing various security camera feeds. Some displayed live views of the mall above, but others showed locations neither of them recognized: dimly lit storage facilities, industrial rooms, and what looked like a section of a fish market. The strangest part? One monitor displayed the east parking lot from earlier, the camera angle perfectly centered on the trolley. Grant's stomach turned. They were watching us. Rowan scanned the room, eyes narrowing. No recording devices. These feeds are live only. In the corner of the desk sat a half-empty coffee cup, steam still rising faintly. Whoever had been here had just left. A sudden movement on one of the screens caught Grant's attention. A man in a faded baseball cap, walking briskly through what looked like the very corridor they'd used to reach the basement. "He's still here," Grant said, already moving. They sprinted back into the hallway, Rex surging ahead, the leash taut. The sound of a door slamming echoed through the space, followed by the metallic rattle of something locking into place. They reached the far end just in time to see the man slipping into a stairwell. Rowan shoved the door open, the smell of damp concrete rushing out. The stairwell climbed sharply upward, the echo of running footsteps leading them higher. 2 flights up, the man burst through an exit into the open night air behind the mall. By the time they emerged, he was already halfway across the loading bay. Grant shouted, "Stop!" But the man didn't slow. Then, unexpectedly, he turned his head just for a moment, and Grant saw it. Not fear, not panic, but the faintest trace of a smirk. Seconds later, he was gone into the shadows of the industrial district. Back in the basement, forensics had begun processing the crates. When the first was opened, the contents made every officer in the room pause. Inside were dozens of glass vials, each labeled with a simple number, just like the ones found in the metal case from the duffel bag. But this time they were stored alongside detailed paperwork, handwritten notes, shipment logs, and addresses spanning multiple cities. One address, circled in red, stood out. It wasn't far. In fact, it was within walking distance. A small, unmarked warehouse tucked behind the very fish market seen on the basement monitors. Grant felt the pieces sliding into place. The bag at the trolley, the man in the cap, the wiped cameras, everything had been a distraction, pulling them toward this hidden level, while something bigger was moving elsewhere. Rowan's voice was low but certain. "We're not done here. That warehouse, that's where this trail ends." As they secured the basement, Rex stood at the elevator, looking up toward the surface. It wasn't impatience, it was readiness. The kind that meant he knew the next move was coming, and soon. And in that moment, Grant realized they hadn't just uncovered an operation. They'd stepped directly into the center of it. What waited at the warehouse would either close the case or open something far more dangerous. The warehouse behind the fish market looked ordinary from the street. Aged brick walls, faded signage, and a single steel door that blended into the alley. But the moment Rex stepped out of the SUV, his posture stiffened. Inside, the air was colder, damp with the smell of seawater and something sharper. Wooden crates were stacked in neat rows, some open to reveal fresh fish on ice. Others were sealed, identical to the ones from the mall's basement. Rex pulled sharply toward the far end, past the fish stalls, stopping at a locked freezer unit. The metal was frost cold under Grant's hand, but when the lock was cut and the door opened, the sight inside made the entire team fall silent. Dozens of vials, identical to those from the duffel bag, sat neatly packed in insulated cases. Beside them were ledgers, names, dates, and transactions stretching back months. This wasn't a side operation. This was the hub. Rowan's voice broke the quiet. "We've got enough to shut them down." Outside, officers moved in, securing the area. And through it all, Rex sat by the freezer door, calm now, as if satisfied the trail was complete. Grant knelt beside him, hand on his shoulder. "Good work, partner. By the time the evidence was loaded and the suspects in custody, night had fallen over the city. The mall, the basement, the warehouse, they were all pieces of the same puzzle. And thanks to one K9's unshakable focus, that puzzle was finally complete. And just like that, Rex had pulled the final thread, uncovering a chain no one saw coming. From a single trolley to an entire hidden network, one alert changed everything. If you thought this was intense, wait until you see what Rex uncovers next. Drop your favorite dog's name in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and don't miss what's coming because the next one might just leave you speechless.